Coming up on this episode, the latest on Jonathan Kuminga's free agency, updates on Al Horford, D'Anthony Melton, and a relatively new name to monitor from a Warrior perspective as the franchise has been linked to a veteran guard who might be an ideal backup for Steph and Curry. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast on a day where the LA Clippers made their reunion with Chris Paul official on a 1-year, $3.6 million contract, assuming this will be CP3's 21st and final season in the league. So good luck to him, but not too much good luck because obviously the Clippers are a Pacific rival of the Warriors and they're continuing to have an excellent offseason, obviously. Signing Brook Lopez, Bradley Beal, trading Norman Powell for John Collins. They've done some fantastic stuff. And meanwhile, the Warriors, we are now over 3 weeks into free agency and we continue to wait on them to do absolutely anything. We do think that things will be happening here at some point and we get an idea of what could happen. But until these things actually take place, the speculation will continue to grow. So what is the latest on the Warriors and their free agency plans? We've got the Jonathan Kaminga situation, which clearly has to be the first domino to fall here before the Warriors can essentially do anything else. We've spoken about that and the Warriors needing to know their payroll situation, their roster situation, and what kind of flexibility they have before they can go out and make subsequent moves, which we assume will happen here after the Kuminga thing eventually falls. When that happens, we still don't really know. The latest on him, the Phoenix Suns obviously came in as a team last week that was linked to Kuminga, but it's since been reported that they don't really have the assets or the things that the Warriors would want in a sign and trade to really pull off a sign and trade situation for Kuminga. So we can almost, I think, rule Phoenix out. I just don't, as I spoke about, I think on last episode after those reports of Phoenix being interested, I just don't think they have anything that the Warriors would necessarily want. And of course, that's since been reported. So we can almost rule the Suns out. You've got the Kings, obviously, who at the start of free agency really emerged as a strong contender and a strong suitor for JK. That seems to have died down. We haven't really heard anything about that. They've gone and signed Doug McDermott to a 1-year contract. Obviously, the trade went through as well with Valanciunas for Saric. And I just don't see anything forthcoming with the Kings at the moment either. But we'll wait and see on that one. I also think when it comes to the Suns and the Kings, I think the Warriors would much prefer to send Kuminga anywhere else than to a divisional rival in one of those two teams. Like, if there's a situation where Kuminga does leave the Warriors and he suddenly develops into a star, then it would hurt all the more worse if he's actually playing you 4 times a season as part of another team in the Pacific Division. So I think from that standpoint, the Warriors would probably prefer to trade JK to an Eastern Conference team. And if it is going to be a Western Conference team, then ideally not one in the Pacific. But I think the Chicago Bulls here have kind of reemerged as maybe the team to monitor if there is going to be a sign and trade happening here. Now, I think I've said for a while, and I suppose things can change pretty drastically day to day, but I think I've said for a while now that I expect Kaminga to come back and that I probably prefer that to be the case based simply on the pretty underwhelming offers that the Warriors have already had and what they're likely to get back if they do ultimately execute a sign and trade with JK. So I think I still expect a re-signing to happen here on a short-term contract. Of course, there's still the unlikely event that Kaminga takes the qualifying offer. That's still a possibility, albeit I think unlikely because I think that's a huge risk for him to take and one that he probably shouldn't. But if there was to be a sign and trade take place, it might be the Bulls now that have kind of, again, re-emerged as the team. Again, them being in the Eastern Conference would probably motivate the Warriors a little bit. And Jake Fisher reported late last week, since I last spoke, I think, that not the Bulls, but Kuminga's camp themselves had actually been trying to angle for a way to get Kuminga and Josh Giddey paid together as restricted free agents in Chicago, which would be quite something, and I think remains pretty complicated, and that's the problem. And then you've got, obviously, the Warriors needing to agree to any kind of sign and trade scenario. Obviously, Kobe White is someone that we have discussed pretty frequently as a potential target for the Warriors in a Kuminga sign and trade to the Bulls. He's been kind of the player that a lot of us as Warrior fans have circled. Now, what I would say about that is Brett Siegel of Clutch Points reported earlier today that the Bulls have shown no indication that they want to trade Kobe White whatsoever. And I also think the amount of veteran guards the Warriors have been linked to here in free agency would also suggest that, one, the Bulls have indicated to them that they're not getting their hands on White, whether it be a Kaminga trade or otherwise, or two, that the Warriors don't necessarily have any interest in Kobe White. And I could see, as much as we've been talking about how White would be an ideal target for the Warriors, given that he's a 20-point per game scorer and he could be that third guy alongside Steph and Jimmy and also be a far cleaner fit compared to Kaminga, given his shooting abilities. I do see why the Warriors might balk at Kobe White, and that is because of his looming contract extension. It's the only reason why I think a lot of us as Warrior fans have thought of him as a potentially realistic target, because how much does Chicago want to pay Kobe White and Josh Giddey as a starting backcourt going forward beyond next season? Now, White's on an expiring $12.8, $12.9 million deal, whatever it is, which does make him a realistic target in a Kuminga sign and trade. But if you are going to do that from a Warrior perspective, you are essentially committing yourself to, okay, we have to pay this guy on a new extension, which could be upwards of $25 million. And if you start paying Kobe White 25 plus and you got Steph and you got Jimmy, yes, like Steph and Jimmy and Draymond, even for that matter, have only got 2 years left on their deals. But I think the Warriors want to retain as much flexibility as they possibly can in the 2027 offseason. So I can see a world in which the Warriors, even if the Bulls were willing to trade Kobe White for Jonathan Kuminga, where the Warriors would actually say, no thanks. And I think you look at the alternatives that could be available in free agency, and they might say to themselves, hey, we can get one or two of these guys on minimum contracts who we don't have to pay necessarily big bucks moving forward, or at least they're going to be cheaper than Kobe White is going to be, and we can get them without giving up Kuminga and potentially bringing Kuminga back. So I still think Siegel brought up Ayo Dosunmu as a potential option for the Warriors. Again, I'm just not sure. I wouldn't have any interest in him if I was Golden State. If I was Chicago, I wouldn't necessarily be too willing to give up draft assets because you're not a great team necessarily. You should be going to rebuilding mode. I don't think they're at a point where they should be giving up draft capital. Maybe if they were to do that, the Warriors might have some interest, particularly if it gave them some salary relief and they weren't actually taking back too much the other way. But then how does Chicago make that happen if they're paying Kaminga and Giddey? This is why it's just also complicated. The Warriors, we've heard repeated reports now that the Warriors have no interest in Nikola Vucevic on a $21.5 million expiring contract. Obviously, after we saw the Marcus Smart move and him getting a buyout with the Wizards and then signing with the Lakers, which is a notable move for them, I am kind of looking around at potential veteran guys on expiring contracts on rebuilding teams and whether they could finalize a buyout. And I do think at some point, maybe not in the offseason, but maybe mid-season, there is a chance of a Vucevic buyout situation if the Bulls really, really can't trade him. And therefore, I'm sure the Warriors might have interest then if he's coming on a minimum contract compared to, again, trading for a $21.5 million guy and giving up legitimate assets for him. Particularly, they're just not going to give up Kaminga for Vucevic. I've said that from the beginning of the offseason. You're just not making that move whatsoever. The potential and talent of Kaminga for a 35-year-old, no thank you. So I still think in all of this, again, if there was a sign and trade, I'd probably put Chicago back at the top of the list in terms of where JK could go. But again, it's just so complicated by the numerous factors, notably the fact that the Bulls have to still resolve the future of Josh Giddey, who that doesn't seem like it's going to be sorted anytime soon. So again, all signs to me point to Kaminga coming back to the Warriors. And I don't know, I think it's just frustrating that I think all of us can kind of see that, hey, There's not much value coming in for the Warriors. Like, Kuminga's not going to get a huge payday elsewhere. Can we just get a short-term contract sorted out? And that'll allow the Warriors to go and make their other moves. Like, it's just frustrating that this is being dragged out. I understand it. I understand Kuminga wanting to get his money. I understand Kuminga having a preference to going to another team where he can really spread his wings and try and become the star that he wants to be. I get it, but the Warriors do have leverage in this situation. I get why they're not just giving up Kaminga for nothing, because I understand, yes, he might not be a perfect fit at the Warriors, but he's still an asset and the Warriors still want something for him. And if that's not forthcoming, then I just don't see what the other avenue here is, aside from Kaminga coming back on a 2-year, maybe 3-year contract, 3rd-year player option at, around $20 million, maybe just over $20 million per year. Try and showcase him at the start of next season, and hopefully it either works and he can actually become a long-term piece, surprisingly, as rare as that might sound right now, and as unusual as that might sound. Or they obviously showcase him to become a real trade candidate once eligible on January 15. And you've at least tried to preserve his value enough where you can go and make a deal for a player that could really help you over the second half of the season. So we'll wait and see. I'm hoping every night I go to sleep here, Australian time, I'm hoping to wake up the next morning to something in regard to Kaminga. I've been literally wearing my Apple Watch every night for the last 3 weeks because I want to get notifications like buzzing on my wrist for potential moves that are made at like 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, my time. So I'd prefer this all to be done and not to have to do that and try and get a full night's sleep without being interrupted by notifications on my Apple Watch buzzing through my wrist. But this is just the reality of the situation, unfortunately. Just some quick updates in terms of Al Horford and D'Anthony Melton. Mark Stein again reiterated on Sunday US time in a piece from him on the Stein line that Horford and Melton will eventually land with the Warriors. It's the same reports we've been hearing for the last couple of weeks now, even further than that if you're talking about Horford. I mean, we're literally over 3 weeks now into the Horford stuff because that started to emerge in the hours leading up to the start of free agency. The Melton stuff has now been going on for 10 days, 2 weeks. I don't know, you see these other moves being made and it just signifies further that, hey, Al Horford and D'Anthony Melton will be coming to the Warriors at some point. When that is, again, will be dependent on the Kuminga situation. Just another name that I wanted to bring up here, and this is kind of the main point of this episode, another name that's been linked to the Warriors in the last couple of days, and it's really interesting to me that this seems to have come on the back of Damian Lillard choosing to go to the Portland Trail Blazers and Bradley Beal choosing to go to the LA Clippers, because we know the Warriors had interest in both of those guys, and they've obviously chosen to go to other Western Conference rivals. The Warriors have started to be strongly linked, I would say, to Malcolm Brogden as an unrestricted free agent. So we heard Fisher again in his when he was talking about Kuminga's future and stuff like that, and the Bull stuff in the same piece that he did, or the same YouTube live that he did. He spoke about Malcolm Brogden and him having interest across the league, including from the Warriors. And then Siegel again wrote today, and I quote, "Another name worth mentioning that was connected to the Dubs in Las Vegas is Malcolm Brogden. The former Sixth Man of the Year has held out in free agency to this point despite multiple suitors contacting him in recent weeks." So the initial thing to me is, like, some of these free agents who remain unsigned, if you've got offers elsewhere, right, why are you not taking them? And this is why I think, like, the Warriors, again, might have handshake agreements in place with more than just Horford and Melton. Because if you're Malcolm Brogdon and you've got interest from the Kings and from multiple, going back to the Bucks, something, whatever, if you've got other offers on the table, why aren't you taking them? Because in reality, the Warriors here, it's not like they have that much financial flexibility. Now, there's a chance that, Kuminga goes and they don't get much back in return salary-wise, and they can open up some different means. They could potentially open up the full MLE and split that up a little bit. So maybe you could get a little bit more from the Warriors than just the minimum. But if Kuminga comes back, then all you're going to get is the minimum, right? Assuming that the taxpayer mid-level goes to Horford. So therefore, it's not like I don't think there's a strong possibility that these guys are holding out hope that there's a bigger offer coming from the Warriors. To me, it would just be a case of maybe like they've got handshake agreements in place with the Warriors. And again, it's a situation like Horford and Melton where we're just waiting for the Kuminga domino to fall here. So again, maybe Brogden is part of that. And again, that's kind of been surging a little bit in the last few days. Now, in terms of Malcolm Brogden as a player, I actually like it. I think he would be an ideal backup for Steph and Curry if, and it's a big if he can get healthy. And I tell you what, if they bring in both Brogdon and D'Anthony Melton, then Rick Celebrini's really going to have his work cut out. On top of the fact that you're bringing in a near 40-year-old Horford, you're going to have Steph turning 38, Jimmy turning 36, Draymond's 35. Like, this is a very old squad. In fact, really only the Clippers are kind of matching the Warriors in terms of an age profile here. So that would be interesting, having Melton and Brogdon both come in having had two really injury-impacted years, both of them in a row. So Brogdon's played 63 games in the last two seasons. I think it's 39 and then 24. Now, some of that may have been the fact that he's played with Portland and Washington, and those two teams, Portland going back to the previous season, and then definitely Washington last season. We're in a situation where it's like, if you've got any kind of injury, you don't need to play. We're more focused on playing the young guys anyway. So I haven't really dived too much into exactly how much, I suppose, those rebuilding teams have impacted how many games that Brogdon's played. Like, if he was on a contending team, like if he was on the Warriors in one of the last two seasons, then maybe he might have played more. I don't know. But he's certainly a guy that's dealt with injury issues across the course of his career, really. Like, he's never been a fully healthy guy for multiple years in a row necessarily. But at his best, and again, he's only 32 years old. He's not old by any means. So if he can be somewhere near his best, again, I do think he is an ideal backup to Steph, because for starters, he's a very good player. He's a very good point guard. He holds career averages of 15.3 points, 4.1 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 46.3% from the floor, 38.8% from three-point range. He's a very efficient player, solid ball handler, playmaker, and shooter. Generally a good scorer as well, which is exactly why I think after missing out on Beal and Dame, the Warriors might have shown interest in Brogdon here over a guy like CP3. Like, we know the CP3 experience and how that worked at the Warriors, and I thought CP3 was okay. Like, he was fine, but it ended with a play-in tournament loss to the Sacramento Kings. The team ultimately went nowhere. Like, we know what the Chris Paul experience was. I don't think the Warriors were overly keen on getting back into that and having a reunion with Chris Paul. And I think in Brogdon, you get more of a scoring punch rather than necessarily a playmaking punch, which when the ball is going to be in the hands of Steph and Jimmy predominantly, like, you're going to need a little bit more scoring, and in particular, a little bit more off-ball shooting. And that's why I think Malcolm Brogdon could be excellent, because you've got a guy who could not only handle the ball a bit when Steph's off the floor and really run the offense alongside Jimmy, I suppose, but you've also got a guy who could theoretically play alongside Steph in, similar mold to a Melton, really, where he's like a bit of a combo guard. Now, I think you'd argue that Brogdon is probably a little bit better of a creator and ball handler than Melton is, and I think he's probably primarily a point guard, as Melton's probably primarily a two guard, but they're both combo guards of sorts, which I think the Warriors like. They have guys, they want versatile guys. They want guys who can put the ball on the floor, who can play make a little bit, can shoot a little bit, and again, that's why Chris Paul was fine for the Warriors, but he was never going to be, we know who Chris Paul is, he was never going to be this huge off-ball threat. And Malcolm Brogdon's ability to be a catch and shoot threat, again, allows him to not only play behind Steph and play when he's off the floor, but also potentially alongside Steph. Like, he's 6'5". He's not the defender that Melton is necessarily, but he probably has a little bit more playmaking, allows Steph to be off the ball if they're on the court together. And if you look at the numbers in terms of Malcolm Brogdon in the last three seasons, he's shot 37.1%, 51.8%, and 44.4% on catch and shoot threes over the last 3 years. So again, it's a big if, don't get me wrong, but if he can be healthy, then that's just another guard that you can kind of add to the mix. And I suppose from a Warriors standpoint, you're saying, well, if we're bringing Melton and Brogden on minimum contracts, then we really probably only need one of them to really work. Now, ideally, both of them work, but if we can ensure that at least one of them's playing in every game, that's a good result because you've already got Steph, Pods, Buddy Hield, obviously. They're kind of your three. Moses can play a little bit at the two. But the Warriors, like, they do need, I think, a backup to Steph. Like, he's going to turn 38 in January, right? They need some kind of reliable guard behind him. And, like, what's the alternative here? Like, re-sign Pat Spencer, have Taron Armstrong on a two-way contract, eat some of those minutes. Like, I think Malcolm Brogdon, again, is a far, far better option than those guys. And so, on the nights where Steph's resting, like, do we expect Steph to play 65-plus games next season? Ideally, he wouldn't. Now, ideally, that would come more just through rest than any injury, obviously. But there's going to be nights when Steph rests, when Jimmy rests, and the Warriors need some offensive creation and ball handling. And Malcolm Brogdon won Sixth Man of the Year just 2 years ago. And then, yes, he's had a very injury-interrupted 2 seasons since then. But that year he had with the Boston Celtics over 14 points a game. Again, he was like 44.8% from three-point range or something. 4 rebounds, 4 assists a game around there. Very, very elite backup player in this league. And if you're going to have Steph Curry resting games and potentially missing time through injury, like, we've got to take that into account at his age. He's coming off the hamstring injury in the playoffs, which we don't expect to hamper him going into next season, but you never know what can happen. Like, you do have to try and accommodate for some of this stuff when these guys get to these ages. And if you've got Malcolm Brogdon being able to fill in for Steph Curry, now no one's going to replace Steph Curry, but that might be one of the best options available in the entire NBA. Again, if Malcolm Brogdon can get to anywhere near the point that he was at just 2 years ago with the Boston Celtics. And it's worth noting as well, and it's minor, and it's not really got anything to do with it, but it is an interesting tidbit nonetheless. Like, Brogdon and Horford did play together on that same Celtics team in 2022-23. Like, there is some familiarity there. Maybe that could help a little bit if those guys are playing a bit together. So that's an extra layer to all of this. But again, it's a big if in terms of Malcolm Brogdon getting healthy. But if he can, and we know the Warriors have a history of this in terms of Celebrini getting Otto Porter Jr. right in that 2021-22 season, when basically the years before and after that, he was perpetually on the sidelines not playing, and the Warriors got one good year out of Otto Porter and it resulted in a championship. Maybe they can do the same again with Malcolm Brogdon. And then you've got another version of Melton, who I think he's more of a long-term play in terms of, if he has a really good year, then you would actually try and bring him back. And again, for next season, I think if you can get one of Melton or Brogdon really up and going, playing 65, 70 plus games, ideally, again, you get both. But it's almost like having two swings at the one play, where it's like, okay, we need another guard here. We're going to add 2 guards who we think have got really high upside, which they do. Like Melton, we saw the fit with him. We know who he can be in the Warriors system, and we know what Malcolm Brogdon was as the Sixth Man of the Year in the league just 2 years ago. So this could work out. This could be really, really good for the Warriors if they can get their hands on both Melton and Brogdon. Again, the injury risks are significant, but we're talking about minimum contracts. I think it's high upside plays, and again, you just hope that at least one of them can be a really positive influence and play consistently for you entering next season. So let me know what you guys think about Malcolm Brogdon. I'm all for it. I like it. Again, injury risk, sure, but it's probably the kind of risk the Warriors have to take, given they're just, the tier below, the real top tier teams in the Western Conference. So let me know what you think. I'll finish it up there, guys. Let me know if you've got any other thoughts on the Kaminga situation, on any other potential free agents. Just to finish it up as well in terms of the Kobe White thing, I just don't think the Warriors would have had interest in Dame, Beal, Melton, obviously, and now, like, you've got this Malcolm Brogdon situation. Would the Warriors really have significant interest in Brogdon if they thought there was a chance of getting Kobe White in a Kuminga trade? I just don't think so. Like, they're not going to get all three. They're not going to say Melton, White, and Brogden. Now, they could go 2 of the 3, but it seems more likely at this stage that could be Melton and Brogden as opposed to Melton and Kobe White. So just let me know what you guys think of anything that's happening in French, your potential Kuminga sign and trades at the moment. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciating. Follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. As always, I'll be back whenever the Warriors make a move here or there's any big speculation surrounding what they could do. Thanks again, guys.